Welcome back. Anger persists this morning on the campus of Columbia University after ICE agents arrested 29-year-old student Ellie Agayeva, who is from Azerbaijan, early yesterday morning in student housing. Columbia President Claire Shipman said the agents misrepresented themselves to get access to the dorm.
Shortly after 6 a.m., 5 federal agents from the Department of Homeland Security, without any kind of warrant, entered an off-campus Columbia residential building. The agents gained entry by stating they were police searching for a missing child. They made their way to the apartment of the student they were targeting with the same story. Our security cameras captured the agents in the hallway showing pictures of the alleged missing child. Once inside the apartment, it became clear they had misrepresented themselves.
DHS said in a statement investigators verbally identified themselves and visibly wore badges around their necks, and that the building manager and her roommate led officers into the apartment. The arrest immediately sparking backlash from Columbia's campus to Washington, where New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani was already meeting with President Trump and said he shared his concerns about the arrest. Now, late in the afternoon, Agayeva posted on Instagram that she was released and was safe and okay, but in complete shock about what happened. Let's bring in MS Now's Josh Einiger from outside the building where that student was detained, and Oscar Wolf, who is student body president for Columbia School of General Studies. Josh, let's start there. What more are you learning about Ellie Agayeva and why she was detained?
Well, so Anna, why she was detained is really hard to answer. What she did to get on the radar of the Department of Homeland Security and ICE. For all appearances, she was keeping a relatively low profile, at least on campus. She's 29 years old. She's majoring in neuroscience and political science. What's interesting here is that she's a social media influencer. She has about 100,000 followers on Instagram, but the majority of her content on Instagram has to do with a day in the life of a college student and what her life is like. Nothing that would be controversial, which would put a target on her back, the way we've seen with other, protest leaders, specifically here at Columbia, who've had a profile that has made them a target of ICE. So as far as we know, all ICE has said is that her student visa was terminated way back in 2016, and that's why they came to get her yesterday.
And so, Oscar, Columbia, of course, has been at the center of some of these fights of the Trump administration related to immigration and students who have visas here. What is the reaction on campus to this arrest?
You know, I think before the events of the last 48 hours or so, I would have said that there was still a general anxiety of being a student at Columbia, given the events of the last 2 years. But with all that being said, we had actually really started to get back to a place that I would almost call normal. But I think that since what's happened with Ellie, there has been a move from kind of a general anxiety to a real active fear again. Like was just mentioned, many of the detentions from the past year were really of the prominent protest leaders. And I think that there's sort of a general recognition at this point that the scope has really widened, and keeping your head down and going to class does not necessarily mean you are exempt from what's happening right now.
So Ellie Agayeva did have a pretty strong social media presence and does still. Yeah. She has over 100,000 followers on Instagram, as well as 114,000 plus on TikTok. Yeah. She posted a video earlier this week about studying. Let's just take a real quick look.
Study with me for 10 hours because I am behind on everything. Today I will be studying for my genetics exam and going through literature for my research manuscript. As a first step, I rewatch my genetics lectures. After each lecture, I review the slides and then use Feynman technique, which is when you pretend to teach the topic to someone else. If I stumble or can't explain the topic clearly, I go back and review just that part. Once I feel confident, I start tackling practice problems.
About her experience there as a student, but she's also putting herself out there.
Sure.
Why do you think she was targeted?
It's a fascinating question. I think it's really hard for us to know if her having a prominent social media presence was related to it, right? I was talking to some of my fellow students yesterday who were saying, why did President Trump go ahead and do this if he was just going to end up releasing her when Mayor Mamdani called? And I think what I see on the ground is that the impact happened regardless, right? She may be released, and that is a fantastic outcome in this one case, but the general feeling on campus is that they can do this, right? Columbia did all the things that they were supposed to do. They were misrepresented, right? The agents misrepresented themselves coming in. So I think that is really the feeling that's most prominent among students.
Oscar Wolf, thank you so much for joining us. Josh Einiger, thank you for your reporting. I want to take you right back.